But we know that we're living on a planet that has evil, and right now they're all going crazy with the evil. So let's just get ourselves in shape. And, we don't have to worry about retroviruses or heavy metals or anything else they want to throw at us. Have at you, because we're going to be strong.
Hey friends, Sean from SGT Report here. As you all know, we are under multifaceted attack, and the coronavirus is just the tip of the iceberg. I think you're really going to enjoy this in-depth, detailed interview with my friend Val. But before we begin, just a quick word about this interview's sponsor. Many health experts now agree that consuming collagen is as crucial as it gets to renewing and revitalizing how you look and feel. It's being touted as the greatest supplement to ever hit the market, and it can do wonders for reducing wrinkles, strengthening hair and nails, supporting healthy pain-free joints, reducing cellulite, and even boosting your metabolism so you can drop those unwanted pounds. But did you know that most collagen supplements don't work at all? I mean, literally, next to no benefit. I encourage you to watch the free video over at my site, healthwithsgt.com, to learn about how to go about choosing the right collagen for you and the proper way to use it. That's healthwithsgt.com, and see the reasons why I personally use and trust this source of collagen. So support your health today with collagen. I'll leave the link below this interview. Friends, thank you so very much for tuning in. It's wonderful to have you back. Thank you one and all for clicking play. YouTube doesn't want you to. In fact, they're not sending out alerts when my videos get posted. There's a gray bar that says send alert notifications to subscribers. It's grayed out. I can't click it or unclick it. So more funny things happening with YouTube and my channel, but thank you so much for your support. A special shout out to my patrons keeping us in the fight for truth. And I'm really glad to welcome to the show right now a new guest. It's Hope's mom. Do you guys remember when I did the interview with Hope and T-Von? Those guys were fantastic. And Hope's mom, Valerie, is a holistic nutritionalist, credentialed, working on her PhD, a great lady, and she joins us right now. How are you, Valerie?
Hi, I'm doing great, Sean. And I just want to say that I've been listening to you for years now, and I'm just really honored to be able to have this opportunity to talk with you and really appreciate your work. So thank you.
Hey, thank you. Thank you. Well, thanks for reaching out. After that interview posted, you sent me a very kind email. You didn't ask to come on. You were just very complimentary, and you gave me some important information about nutrition and how to protect ourselves against the coronavirus. So then I, in turn, invited you to come on. So thanks for accepting. I'm glad you're here. I want to talk to you, Valerie, about the coronavirus. It's a nasty little critter, and now that it's been bioweaponized, it's even nastier. So your thoughts on what this thing is. Explain to people about the coronavirus that we used to know about, but of course this thing has been bioweaponized in a lab and now it's even worse.
Well, yeah, the coronavirus, it's been on the label of the Lysol can for many years now. It says human coronavirus. So coronavirus is a kind of an umbrella term. I actually have a PowerPoint. If you want, I can put that up now.
Yeah, can you do a screen share? That would be great. Let's walk through it, because the coronavirus was not a big deal before they bioweaponized it. And by the way, we know there's patents on this thing. And you also know, Valerie, that in October, Event 201 was held, which is this event between Johns Hopkins, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and the World Economic Forum. Yes, the bankers. They put on an exercise simulating a global pandemic of the coronavirus. So that's very coincidental, if not completely 100% diabolical. So yeah, take us through your PowerPoint. And now, by the way, guys, Valerie is living in Morocco with Hope and T-Von, or at least where Hope and T-Von live there in Morocco as well. And as I said in the pre-interview, in the words of Liz Lemon,
I want to go to there.
I want to go to there, Valerie. Morocco sounds fantastic.
Yeah, it really is quite nice. And we've actually been here. I haven't been here the whole time, but we started coming in 2014. So it's 2020. So yeah, quite a few years now. And we finally settled right in the middle of Morocco. We're in Marrakesh, and it's really, it's just spectacular in so many ways. And probably the best thing that I can share with you about it is that we don't have that feeling of living in a police state here. It just doesn't exist. And there's other things too, like very little electromagnetic frequency that I was becoming very, very sensitive to it when I was back in Pennsylvania. So there's some things that just aren't an issue here. And, my family's back in the States, but I'm taking a break. I have some medical tourism things I have to do. I have to get some things fixed, and I can't afford it in the States. So it's really a very convenient place for me to be at this time.
Hey, for those who don't know, how does it work for an American to live there? Is it a work visa, or do you have a passport now? Are you a Moroccan citizen? How's that work?
There's no visa. You have to have a passport to get here, and you have to leave the country like every 3 months. They want you to leave and come back, so they don't want you to like stay without being a citizen. I am not a citizen. I don't really want to be a citizen. I have very close ties back in America, and it's really a lot to go through. But Tavon and Hope are going through something where they're getting what's called a carte du jour, where they will be basically Moroccan citizens, and wouldn't have to make that trip every 3 months. So every 3 months I have to find some place to go and then come back.
But that's getting scary now because, as the coronavirus spreads, the last thing you want to do is be on an enclosed tube flying across the ocean to go somewhere where you don't necessarily want to be around people you don't necessarily know. So you're going to have to probably draw a line in the sand here pretty quick and figure out where you want to put roots, at least until this virus passes.
Yeah, well, I don't have to fly anywhere. I could just go across the border into Spain.
Well, that's true. But still,
Yeah, it's
Spain.
quite a drive, but yeah, in Spain,
Stay the heck away from Italy.
Oh, for sure. Terrible what's going on, really. So did you want me to talk about the free energy first, my little experience there? I think that your viewers would find that very interesting.
If you'd like, we can. I do want to talk about coronavirus, though, and how to protect ourselves from it. And you being a holistic nutritionalist might be able to bring some important information to the table for us.
Yeah, I think I can. I really do. And I'm going to start this off by saying that there's only one solution, Sean. There's only one solution. Do you know what that is?
Love.
Yes.
Jesus.
And a strong immune system.
Yeah, of course.
Okay. You had a guest on the other night, Dr. Shiva. I'm sorry, I don't remember.
Ayadori. Yeah, he's running for Senate in Massachusetts.
Right.
He's an inventor, very, very smart guy.
Right. So he was talking, and I was listening to him talk, and I was wondering if he was going to talk about some of the things that I was going to talk about. And the only thing that he said was, our immune systems are strong. So our immune systems, when they're functioning, are strong. But I really believe that we have to live a lifestyle that takes into consideration detox. We have to live that immune boosting lifestyle. So that's what I'm going to talk about a little bit. And I'm going to talk also about some electromagnetic problems that exacerbate the virus.
Yes, please do. And take us into 5G if you'd like, because there's a very wide sweeping concern, and I think a founded concern about 5G exasperating, I can never say that word, about 5G hurting people even more and making the coronavirus even worse in China, because Wuhan is a pilot city for 5G. It's everywhere in Wuhan.
Yeah, and I think we all, or most of us, saw Dana Ashley's latest video about those effects.
That's precisely right. That's actually, that's what I'm referring to. And I'll post that video below this one if you guys want to click on it.
Gosh, it's really, and I really appreciated how she explained the physiology of what happens and why people are dropping dead. And it really makes a lot of sense when she talked about the little electron spin around the oxygen molecules that make that molecule, that oxygen, unrecognizable to the hemoglobin that has to pick it up and bring it to the cells that need it. So it makes perfect sense that people that are getting this particular system cut off, this process cut off, you can't live without oxygen. So this is what's happening, and also all of the sinister things behind it, things that we know about, and some things that I'm sure we don't know about. So, okay, so let me start. I just want to say that we are exposed to between 30 and 100 million times more radiation than we were 100 years ago. And let's always keep in mind that we have an electromagnetic life in the human cells. So that's kind of like a premise, that I want to start with, that we have an electrical life, and the way that they're trying to manipulate the electricity and the magnetism all around us is definitely affecting us. I also want to say that in my research for doing this interview with you, took me down so many rabbit holes, and there's so much information, but you can't really glean things that you're looking for, and I believe that's by design. I'm sure that there are blackouts on the web all over the place. So I did my best. I hope it's not too long or too technical. So the type of radiation that I'm talking about in particular is non-ionizing radiation. Now, we could talk about ionizing radiation, which is up here. You can see medical x-rays, radioactive sources. Sunlight is also can be moved over a little bit onto that side of the ionizing radiation. And this ionizing radiation, the reason that it's so dangerous is because it breaks our DNA, and it does it just like that. The non-ionizing radiation also breaks our DNA, but it does it in 2 steps rather than 1. So it's kind of a slower process, and we're talking about what goes on inside of every single cell. And if you remember Dana's talk, she talked about what goes on in the cells when we're exposed to these things. So that really is, I would really suggest that your viewers watch that video. The military, and particularly the U.S. Air Force and the U.S. Navy, have extensive research on the negative effects of non-ionizing radiation. And if you look up here, you can see the frequencies now. We've got very low frequency, radio frequency spectrum, microwaves, infrared, ultraviolet, X-rays, and gamma cosmic rays. So this end over here is very damaging to the system, a very low frequency, and sometimes we refer to these as extremely low frequency, or ELF. So if I say ELF in this presentation, you'll know that this is what I'm talking about. They use different things to exacerbate, that's how you say it. And one of the things that they're using here, let's see if I can move this down, are chemtrails and HAARP. Now, I am not an expert in chemtrails or HAARP, but when I woke up in 2011 and I started to see what was happening in the skies, I started researching like crazy. I couldn't believe that this was actually going on. I really just couldn't believe it. And I researched and I got really depressed. So I stopped researching, and I really didn't want my life to be about that. It was so dark. But some of the effects that they're trying to get, they're getting through chemtrails and HAARP. Now, HAARP, a lot of people say they're not using HAARP anymore, but that's not true. There are 72 HAARP-like, what we call ionosphere heaters worldwide, and I believe that they're even possibly using it as some type of network. Again, I'm not an expert on geomagnetics, magnetism, or any of these things, but I know what I know, and I know simply by looking up at the skies, and this is what I see, like the 2 pictures that we have here. These are chemtrails, and when chemtrails fill the sky, on the right side, you'll see the HARP effect, and I'm sure that we see this all the time. Now, what are they doing up there? They are creating plasma, and they're working in the ionosphere to create this plasma. Now, the ionosphere is about 100 kilometers above the Earth. It starts about 100 kilometers above the Earth. First we have the atmosphere and the, I think I have another one here. Let's go there. Yeah, here we go. So here you can see the ionosphere. If you look, this is the ionosphere. And okay, so let me tell you what they're doing. If you're familiar with Jim Lee from climateviewer.com, he made this wonderful diagram here, which really tells you exactly what they're doing. They are setting off. Now, a lot of people may not know this, and this was something I just learned from Jim Lee. They're setting off sounding rockets, which is different than the chemtrail planes that we see. This is a plane. And here's a rocket that goes off into the ionosphere and dumps its payload of aluminum and barium and lithium. The reason they use lithium is because they can see, in the daytime, they'll be able to see the effects. They're looking at the effects for weather control, even though they say they're not doing any of these things. They're doing these things, I'm sure of it. They're creating what is called ionospheric mirrors up there, so that will reflect back down to the Earth. So chemtrails is really only one thing that are dumping the chemicals, but we've also got these rockets that are going up into space that are dumping the chemicals, and they're creating these mirrors, and this has a plasma effect. It's called an active aurora. Now, where do we know that name from? We know it from HARP. HARP is High Frequency Active Aurora Research Project. And believe it or not, HARP has been around for over 60 years. Ever since World War II ended, I believe, they started messing around with this stuff, and we had paperclip and all of that.
Well, and I want to let people know there's a paper out there, and it escapes me. I think it's a U.S. Air Force paper, Owning the Weather by 2025, that was leaked maybe 10 years ago. So they're getting real close to owning all of it. They probably already do. They can manipulate and make earthquakes happen. So it is very dangerous stuff. Did you get that information about rockets dumping payloads from Jim Lee? Was there evidence provided that that's accurate? I've never heard of that.
Yeah, he's got a video. It's about an hour and a half long, called Chemtrails from Space. It's very, very good.
Okay.
You really should check that out. Yeah, I had never heard of it either, but to now know that there's even more stuff going on, it's just incredible. But what they're doing is they're doing these experiments in the ionosphere, and the ionosphere, I just passed a couple of slides, and I don't really know how to get back to where I was in this particular thing. No, I'm going the wrong way now. But what they're doing is they're creating plasma. So they spray aluminum and barium. So the aluminum is trimethyl aluminum, which is very toxic to human beings, and barium, some form of barium. The barium gets ionized by the sun, and it makes the aluminum turn into a plasma. And the plasma is, they're shooting energy into the plasma, and things get to be very tiny, tiny particulates. And that's what's raining down on us, and that's what we're breathing in. Cirrus clouds, I'm sure people see the cirrus clouds. Those are loaded with chemicals. So I wish I can get back to where I was in the PowerPoint, because this is not going to be good. How do I figure this out? Oh, wait, previous, there we go. Arrow keys. Previous. Oh, arrow keys. That was Hope giving me.
Hello, Hope.
Sean says hi.
Hope's tech support today.
Yes, Hope and Tavon, they bought this huge antenna too. So, because, we have a little sketchy internet here. One other thing I want to mention about the chemtrails also, I'm sure everybody knows, is it's blocking the sunlight that's getting to the earth. This is, that's chemtrail 101, basically. But that was, I have to say, that was the main reason why I felt I really had to leave the United States. I had to come get some sun.
Yeah.
Pennsylvania is the most overcast state in all of the United States. I'm sure of it. I wake up every morning, I have a white sky, and it's mostly chemtrails. We get them here too in Morocco, but we have lots of organites, so they don't really settle too much around us. But so basically what I want to say about HAARP is that they're messing with the magnetic fields on a huge scale. They say they're doing experiments in the ionosphere, but I believe that they are lacking candor when they say things like that. I believe that HAARP is used militarily, and I know that they're using it. They must be using it to find enemy submarines and underground bases, because they're able to get that vision, with the magnetic technology and all the X-rays and everything that they use. They're able to see enemy submarines and things like that. So it's very, very nefarious, no matter what people say. And the document that you're talking about is this one, I believe. This is from the U.S. Air Force, Weather as a Force Multiplier, Owning the Weather in 2025.
Yep,
And
that's
it shows you, it shows you their plans over here, and you can read the little box down here. PM is precipitation modification. And if you follow that, you could see how that's going up. And storm modification, follow that. Yep, they want it to go up by 2025. So this is the plan.
Well, and it's diabolical too. And I would just add this, because if they can make storms worse in severity and worse in frequency, then they can sell this idea to the young people that the weather's out of control and it's due to climate change, and you must give up all your current forms of energy in the name of saving the planet from climate change. And by the way, pay the bankers carbon credits. It's absolutely diabolical. And you continue to say they're doing this, and we wonder who they is. I pray to God it's not the U.S. military. Is it some breakaway deep state? Is it the Rothschilds? Is it the shadow government, the global? Is it the UN? We don't really know.
Yes.
Or do
all
we know?
Of that. I
Yeah.
think we do know.
NATO? They're the enemies of humanity, though, that's for sure. And they're going to sell this to the young people. You need to give up everything. You need to live in absolute serfdom in the name of saving the planet. And it's UN Agenda 2030 policies, absolutely anti-human.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And it's so evil. It really is so evil, and has so many tentacles.
Can I say one thing too, just real quickly?
Yes,
so in the hour and 5 minutes we have, I really want to make sure that you get to how people can protect themselves from the coronavirus. I want to talk about nutritional, holistic ways to protect yourself, protect your cells in your body, protect your family. So we got to get there. And I want you to give me at least 15 minutes on the free energy background you have too.
Okay.
So, because I think our audience is really familiar with HAARP and chemtrails and all that.
And,
so.
Yeah, I think so too. I do agree with that. Because I'm one of your audience and I'm very familiar with these things. So I just want to say about the Earth's magnetosphere, this is going to be important when I talk about the health aspect of it. There were studies that were conducted that sent very low frequency waves into the magnetosphere, and you could see the magnetosphere on the right side. You can see how it envelops the Earth like that. And they found that the signals were detected halfway around the globe, and some were amplified 1,000 times. So just keep that power number in your head, 1,000 times. And this is how they just sent it around. They sent a signal and it went halfway around the globe. I think that's pretty incredible. Some more things that you'll learn when you go check Jim Lee out at climateviewer.com are where they're shooting off these sounding rockets, and exactly how they create these ELF waves, plasma clouds, holes in the atmosphere, and all that good stuff. And the ionosphere is very prone to catalytic reactions, which means if you have a small event in the ionosphere, it sets off that reaction and you turn into a big event. So in a small part of the ionosphere, it's going to reach out a lot more, probably 1,000 times. Okay, and the nanoparticles, I just want people to know that when they talk about geoengineering, they're talking about environmental control, they're talking about weather control. What's important here today, right now, is their bioengineering, and this is control of biological entities. Now, if you look up bioengineering on the website, you'll see that they're referring to that most of the things that come up are nice courses that you could take at universities and become a bioengineer. But what I'm talking about is the virus that we're all facing right now, that we're all learning about and watching it spread. These are the chemicals that they dump into the atmosphere, and there's problems with these chemicals. You see these red arrows here, the aluminum. This is just from jet fuel, not even from chemtrails. This is just the evolution of jet fuel. Look at that aluminum number, how that's gone up. 9360 parts. Strontium gone up. Titanium gone up. These things are problematic. Titanium affects the lungs. Strontium is a bone stealer.
So wait, this is interesting. I'd never seen this. So Jet A, I've heard of. That's jet fuel. I've heard that used a lot by pilots. JP5 and JP8, those are new forms of formulations of jet fuel.
Yes.
And so they're packing it with aluminum. That's brilliant. These people are so diabolical.
Yeah. Well, this is what they need to create plasma.
Well, and this is what they need to poison us, because sometimes the vaccines don't injure all of the kids. When they put aluminum in the vaccines, which injured my 2 oldest boys, they don't always hurt all the kids. So let's just put it in the air.
Can I say something also about the vaccines?
Please.
I know that there are people out there that are pushing the vaccines, but come on. The vaccines are created by the same companies and people and entities that created this virus. This is a man-made virus. So maybe we shouldn't take those vaccines. So that's why I'm so happy to do this show with you, because I'm going to give you my take on how to keep yourself healthy and how to protect yourself and your family.
Good. And that's why I wanted you to come on, because here's the thing. We are under a multifaceted attack. And Bill Gates, the eugenicist, whose father was a eugenicist, said in a TED Talk, if we do these things and the other things effectively, and he's talking about vaccines, and he's talking about family planning, we could bring down the world's population by maybe 10 or 15%. And now he and these others, John Hopkins and World Economic Forum bankers, run a simulation of coronavirus, and they are setting us up. This is the perfect setup. You take down the global economy, you scare the hell out of everybody, and then you roll out a vaccine. Problem, reaction, solution.
Yeah, it's a pattern for them.
It's the perfect setup, Valerie. This coronavirus is the perfect setup. And now you've got 5G on the screen here, and people are freaking out about 5G in Wuhan, the pilot test city in China, for 5G, and people are dropping dead like flies.
Yeah, and the cruise ship also it brags that it has all these wonderful new signal things on there. I'm not sure if it was 5G. Dana did discuss. I think Dana discussed it. I don't know. I've listened to so many things lately, but just take a look at this picture. Look at that picture. That's 5G, and that's a city underneath it, and that's what those connections are going to have to look like. I know you did a show with Hope and Tavon several weeks back, so I'm not going to go too deeply into this, but I just want to remind people that the frequency of 5G, remember it's a very low frequency, the frequency of 5G penetrates the skin. It actually penetrates the skin as a frequency, and then it's going to do all that oxygen stealing stuff that it does when it penetrates the skin. So we have to know these things. I haven't heard one mainstream channel, or not even, even alternative channels, talk about the danger of the vaccine. I'm scared to death of that vaccine that they're coming up with. And I really haven't heard anybody talk about immunity. So that's what we're going to get into. Of course, this is when those metals are being dumped, it has an antenna effect, and that's kind of the way HAARP works also. It keeps a continuous beam with an antenna. So, we've heard that these things are involved in mind control and things like that. Very serious stuff. So the body is amazing, Sean. I'm sure you know. We have so many biological things that are going on, and they're all going on at the same time. And some of them are extremely, extremely delicate. So 5G penetrating the skin is not a good idea. They set off some things. And the reason I have this slide up here is because intuition, one of the things, people think that intuition is clairvoyance or some spooky kind of a thing, but it's really not. It's a physiological process, and it's mediated by chemical messengers such as hormones, neurotransmitters, and peptides. There are things that are actually going on in the body. And did you know that the average human can detect a stimulus between 1 and 10 seconds before it happens? This is a 35-year study across 7 labs. I would say that is a pretty mysterious happening, but it does happen as a result of a peptide. If we had time, I would go into it. I don't have time. I just want to mention that these are processes that are going on in the body. And this here, things that we sense with. So we have 3 types of sensing mechanisms up here. There's many, many more, but these are the 3 that I chose. Proprioception is the ability to know where we are in space. We have these little proprioceptors that orient us. They put their little antennas out and they orient us in space, and they tell us where we are, so that when we move our arm, we know that we're moving toward a target, or we know that we're sitting or that we're standing. And this is a physiological process that goes on in the body. Chemoreception is things like taste and smell, gustation. And if you lose your smell, very often you can't taste anything. And it's a sense. We're talking about a very sensitive sensing mechanism. Magnetoreception is fascinating to me. It goes along the lines with the HAARP stuff, because the human body actually synthesizes magnetite. So what could that mean? If they're messing around with all that stuff up there and we're making magnetite, we know that we are somehow connected to the magnetic field. Again, I'm not an expert in this, but if we are connected to the Earth's magnetic field and we have all this proprioception going on and chemoreception, and we have magnetoreception, we can understand that that's a very important sense that we have, that they're screwing around with. So just wanted to bring that out. Do you have any questions about that?
No, but I do want to say one thing before I forget. Shout out to Hope and Tivon. They sent us some sleeping pods, which work. Now, I don't know if it's placebo effect, but honestly, I have noticed a huge change in my ability to sleep through the night. I've got one on one side of my bed. My wife has one on her side of the bed, and I've been sleeping through the night. And I've sort of been writing it off to placebo, but I have to tell you, that is real world feedback on those.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Yeah. Well, we know that they work. They really are amazing. And we also know that around our house because of the amount of organite that we have around the house. The chemtrails really do not linger. They come, but they don't linger. There's many effects of the organite, and we know that it doesn't block energy, it changes it. And I wish I had a lab and all that expensive equipment that I can get. You know, I'm a scientist, so I really would like to get that information. Maybe one day I'll have the opportunity to do that. But for right now, I just know that they work and use them.
Is Hope still in the room? Do you guys want to shout out that website? Because if people want to get a sleeping pod, it's I'd advocate it. So I don't know.
Oh yeah, well I have at the end I have the two websites, and people can go there, and I have a little thing for organite. If they want to, they can go.
Is that what the sleeping pods are made of? Organite?
Yes.
Okay. Well, let's get a move on here, because I definitely want people to know how to protect themselves. This coronavirus is really, and mask doesn't cut it. I'm sorry, folks. We got to get into the basics about how to preserve the cellular integrity of our own body since we're under attack.
Do you want me to skip this particular slide? It's very technical.
Well, give us cliff notes.
I'll give you a highlight. Okay, so basically what's happening in the cell, what's happening is each cell, the way that they do biological processes is through something called an action potential, which is a little volt. It's a little voltage activity that happens. We have an electric life in our bodies, and this is one of the events that happens, and it signals the cell to start exchanging things. So you can see in this picture, the calcium goes in, the little circles with the blue things in there are neurotransmitters. It opens up the cell, puts the neurotransmitters out into the cytoplasm, and what happens with electromagnetic frequencies is that it's constantly bombarding the cells with voltage, and all of those substances that are contained are like bleeding out. They're just constantly coming out. And this is, might be one of the reasons why people have problems sleeping also. We know a little bit about bioaccumulation. That's the accumulation of chemicals and substances inside living bodies. And this includes plants, animals, and of course humans. And this is one of the things that's happening with the chemtrails coming down. We're getting this bioaccumulation. Here it is, my favorite. This is the immune system. This is our God-given weapon against any foreign substances that come into the body. It's a very, very complicated thing, so I'm going to try and hone it down for you so that we can get the most important information. But just to know, EMFs weaken the immune system, chemical overload weakens the immune system, things like trauma, prolonged sadness weaken the immune system. Barium, which is being sprayed so that they can get that nice plasma, attacks immune system cells and it makes them non-functional. They specifically the T and B cells, which I don't know how old you are, but I remember back in the 80s when they were studying HIV and AIDS.
Yeah, I do.
The
T count
T and
low.
B cells were, they were very, very big back in those days. And that's when I was in undergraduate school and learned all about the immune system. And it's still the very, very best weapon that we have. Don't go near the vaccines. I can't say that enough. Do not take a vaccine.
By the way, there's some research suggesting or reports I've read that they're using these AIDS drugs to treat some of the sickest of the sick people with coronavirus, and they're claiming to have some effective outcome. But I mean, it's just a witch's brew. It's just so diabolical that there is a bioweaponized coronavirus.
Yeah, I know.
It just leaves you speechless.
It does. It really does. It's hard to even talk about. And before this call, I prayed and prayed and prayed that I would be able to get the most important information out, because it's just such like a primordial ooze of nasty, So let's keep going. So barium also blocks potassium channels, which interferes with cellular energy production. And I think that that's really what the powers that be are really getting good at, especially with this virus. So let me tell you a little bit about this coronavirus. It's a retrovirus. And what that means, and you haven't really heard too much about this, but I'm going to tell you, a retrovirus goes into the cell and replicates itself or duplicates itself, if that's easier to understand, and turns that cell into itself, and then starts replicating itself more and more and more and more. If that isn't awful enough, we need to know that it also goes into the DNA of our cells, so it becomes part of our genome. I know that that's really creepy, and I'm really sorry to say this, but that's what a retrovirus is. It actually becomes part of our genome. Chronic fatigue syndrome is a retrovirus. HIV/AIDS, retrovirus. Hep C, hepatitis C is a retrovirus. Epstein-Barr, all these things that we've heard of in the past, couple of decades. These are all retroviruses. But I think what's happening with COVID-19 is that they have what's called functional gain to function. They've weaponized it. They've taken, I heard Francis Boyle talk about this. He's a Harvard professor in physics. And what he thinks is that they've taken the SARS virus, and if you remember a couple of weeks ago, we were calling this the SARS-2. Well, he believes that they've taken the SARS virus and they have weaponized it and made it even more lethal. So it's got a gain in function. That's what it's called, gain in function. And then, of course, you have whatever happened that this thing got loose. I'm sure it wasn't a bat or a pig. I think people have watched that movie Contagion, where in that movie it was a bat and it was a pig. But in this case, I believe it's something that happened over at that biosafety lab there that they have in Wuhan. Anyway, these things are stored up in the organs, and really what we have to do is detox. There's no getting around it. You have to detox because your immune system fights tirelessly to take care of all kinds of things, not just foreign substances that are coming into the body from the outside, but there are physiological processes that go on in the body that create waste products, and the immune system comes in and it puts its little cells in there and it eats up the waste products and brings it out of the body. So when we are overloaded, the immune system doesn't work properly. And I'm sure you've heard terms like you have to boost your immune system. Well, that's exactly what we have to do. We have to boost our immune system. And I'm devastated that the mainstream is not giving people this information. But, what do we expect from them, right? So one very important part of the immune system is the lymphatic system, which is the fluid that carries nutrients to different parts of our body and takes wastes out of the cells from different parts of our body. And the best part of the lymphatic system is something called the glymphatic system, which is in the brain. Now listen to this. So we go to sleep at night, our brain shrinks to 60% of its size, so that this beautiful lymph fluid that's carrying nutrients and little waste paper, waste baskets to pick up waste, enters the brain space where our brain shrinks, so it goes into our skull and it bathes our brain in an ocean of nutrients, and whatever waste is going on in the brain, it pulls it out and dumps it into the lymphatic system and eventually goes out of the body through the different eliminative organs. too much to talk about right now, but I just wanted to tell you about the lymphatic system because I wanted to tell you how important it is to get good sleep. And I'm so glad that you brought up that you're getting good sleep. That's going to be one of your defenses. And it cannot be overstated how important sleep is. Okay, so let's go over to slide number, let's just go through here. So these are the organs that are affected by toxins, all of them. Here's the lymphatic system that I was talking about. The pineal gland is especially susceptible to aluminum toxicity. You know, pineal gland has a lot to do with our sleep. And here was the information that we spoke about, retrovirus, nanotechnology. Okay, let me just talk a little bit about the mitochondria, very, very important. These are the little bacteria powerhouses of our cells. This is what the cells use for their energy. These little mitochondria actually make energy. They make it in the form of something called ATP. And these are not human cells. These are bacteria that are in our cells, which I think is quite amazing in itself. And this is how the immune system works with the mitochondria. You can see these ROS containing vesicles are these little dots. Oops, go back. These little dots back here. These are oxygen waste products called oxidants or free radicals. This is why we take antioxidants, because we want to take care of these things that happen when there's lots of foreign substances. But they also happen with normal body processes. And they are normally taken up by the mitochondria. Mitochondria processes them, uses its what we call the electron transport chain, which is in here, which has a ton of hydrogen in it, right? And hydrogen, you can see it going through all these channels, right? And coming out, and the bottom line is it takes it and turns it into water, right? So we want this effect, definitely want this effect. Now, what we have been using here, and I'm going to tell you about, I don't know if you can see the machine over my left shoulder here. We just bought a hydrogen generator, and we make hydrogen water, and we breathe it in through a cannula also, and we take treatments every single day. Hydrogen is the smallest molecule, it's the smallest element on the periodic table. And it goes everywhere. And it really is like the backbone of the universe. It does amazing things, and it's in the mitochondria, and it helps, it pairs up with electrons in there, and it takes those nasty oxidants, for which we take antioxidants for, and it turns them into water. So it's just an amazing process. And there it is, in case you can't see in the back. Okay, mineralize. You must get the minerals up in your body. This is so important. I'm talking about macro minerals like calcium and magnesium and things like that, and also the trace minerals. Now, let's just talk a little bit about colloidal silver, which is, I'm sure you know about colloidal silver, Sean?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Yes. Okay. So colloidal silver starts killing these pathogens on contact. Okay. And of course, it's not going to do anything for any heavy metal problems that you have. And let me just say that the heavy metals interfere with your body's process to carry out its immune functions. And that's why I had to have a heavy emphasis on heavy metals in this talk, because they really are part of the whole scenario. So one of the ways that you can protect yourself is with the colloidal silver spray. You can spray it on things. You can take it in your body. Colloidal makes it safe, in my opinion. I raised my kids on colloidal silver. Unless it was completely necessary. They would never take an antibiotic. I would just use silver. I've been making it for 25 years. I make it myself. Now, the stuff that I made for my kids is not going to be strong enough to use in terms of this retrovirus that we're dealing with. So, I would get higher parts per million.
That's an interesting piece of information, because they're saying that many of the antibiotics that we get in this country at hospitals, the supplies will run out quickly if this thing goes pandemic in the United States, because a lot of those antibiotics come from China, believe it or not. So people need to prepare, and I think colloidal silver is pretty good advice.
Yes, colloidal silver definitely has to be in your arsenal. And the other thing that has to be in your arsenal is fulvic and humic acids, because these are the things that are going to pull those retroviruses out and in time, like over several months, they'll even go into the genome and pull it out of the DNA. And in that way, it repairs DNA. Fulvic and humic acids it's made from dirt. It's dirt. It's ancient dirt particles from decomposing plants. Just decomposing plants, not animals, but decomposing plants. And it has the entire spectrum of minerals in it. So it has this amazing ability to morph into, I didn't get to really talk about the receptors in the body. Receptors are very, very important, because that's where all the things connect to on the cells. Every cell has receptors for things. And we used to think that these receptors were just for certain substances, but now we know that all of the cells are interdependent. They are not separate entities, and all of the cells are giving signals simultaneously. They're talking to each other all the time. So anyway, back to fulvic. I'm sorry, I get carried away because I think that physiology is just fascinating.
That's okay.
But fulvic and humic acids literally have this ability to morph their receptors, and they cling on to pathogens, retroviruses, heavy metals, foreign substances that shouldn't be in the body. They cling on to it and they pull them out of the body. These are very, very, this must be in your arsenal against the retrovirus. Silica is another one that is really good for aluminum detox. Silica will pull aluminum, and I believe also barium, out of the body. When you're detoxing and mineralizing, you have to use binders. Cilantro is another one that pulls aluminum out of the body, and barium. Actually, I don't know if cilantro pulls aluminum. Barium, I don't know. I just put all these things up here because if you get these things, you can't go wrong. Glutathione is an antioxidant that our body makes, and there's some amazing research done on glutathione. Things like if you have high levels of glutathione, you live longer, stuff like that. Melatonin is very, very important in the sleep cycle, and I have to say this. When we're awake during the day and it's daylight out and there's lots of light around us, the body makes some substance called sulfate. When we go to sleep at night and everything should be dark, we make melatonin. Melatonin is signaled when sulfate stops being produced because it's no longer daylight. Then melatonin is signaled, and melatonin comes and picks up the sulfate while we're sleeping and distributes it to our central nervous system, the brain and the spine, and all our nerves. So when we are being bombarded with electromagnetic frequencies, but also the lights that are coming off of the machines, like the computers and the tablets and the cell phones and what on TV and whatever else you have going on, the body gets confused and it doesn't make melatonin, or it's prolonged. And then melatonin works as an antioxidant in the brain. It's one of those things that goes on in the lymphatic system of the brain that I discussed. And it can't, if it's not there, the sulfate builds up and it causes problems in the central nervous system. So I had to say that about melatonin. Medicinal mushrooms, amazing immune booster. Amazing. Must be in your arsenal. And also mitochondrial support, such as certain herbs like berberine is one of the herbs that I like to use. And berberine is now coming out. I've been using it for decades, but it's coming out now that it's, there's just a ton of research. I mean, we could have 5 interviews and I wouldn't be able to get through this stuff. So far, so good?
Yeah, so far so good. I guess you could give us a couple examples of medicinal mushrooms.
Reishi is one. And reishi is actually my favorite. I like to make reishi tea with that. And then you have shiitake. There's a formula out there called Stamets 7, which is Paul Stamets is the guy that grows mushrooms over in the Pacific Northwest, and he's got a lot of really good research on that. I really encourage people to do their research also, because we're not going to be able to get the information out as we would like, the censorship and everything that's going on with that. So let me just go through this really quick. Please, only organic food wherever possible, because you've got the problem with glyphosate, which is one of the things that fulvic acid will take care of, but, and some of the other things that I mentioned on the previous slide. But organic is really the way to go. It has a lot of life force in it, has a lot of electricity in it that we love, that feeds the cells, and just organic food is really good for us, much better. And lots of fruits and veggies. Of course, I'm a nutritionist. I'm going to tell you to eat your fruits and veggies. I'm also a mother and a grandmother, so I'm going to tell you to eat your fruits and veggies. Broccoli has a lot of sulfur in it. You want to eat a lot of sulfur foods. That has to do with that sulfate cycle. It has to do with keeping, muscles, and, these are just some hints that I was able to bring together for our interview. Shut off the electronics whenever you can. I know Tavon, when he needs to make a phone call, he turns his phone on. When he's finished with the phone call, he turns his phone off, which gets a little annoying for those of us that want to get in touch with him, but he's being the smart one. You don't want to carry your phone in your pocket or put it next to your head. And, there's tons of information about the dangers of that that we could go into, but I won't. And you want to keep your lymph moving by walking. That's going to move those nice long muscles. The body likes that type of exercise, and that's what keeps the lymph moving so that you can get those nutrients and get those waste products out. Diffusing essential oils, and also let me say that I think that you should use colloidal silver in your diffuser, and you should use colloidal silver maybe in a nebulizer. With the coronavirus, you want to kind of coat your lungs if possible, because now we know about the oxygen factor, and we know about what the 5G or the electromagnetic frequencies are doing. And we know that it attacks the lungs. It attacks something called an ACE2 inhibitor. So it's a good idea to think in terms of maybe getting some of that silver into your lungs. Sleep, we talked about how important that is. Salt baths are really, really good for detox, especially magnesium sulfate, which we know is Epsom salts. You can also take bicarbonate baths, which is just baking soda. And please take news fast. I know it's difficult for people like us that are constantly trying to get information out, but it really is important to shut it off. And we have to go to Casablanca tomorrow to go to customs, and after that, I'm going on a news fast for at least 3 days.
I think that's wise. I think that's funny it's on your list because it's true. We are under psychological warfare, and a big part of that is the news, the bad news, the constant bad news, whether it's coming from Mockingbird mainstream media or you're getting the truth about the bad news from alternative news media sources. Bad news is part of the psychological warfare. And the point I just made recently in an interview, Valerie, is that if you are self-sufficient on a ranch out in the middle of nowhere and you weren't getting any information and you didn't even know about this coronavirus, but you were raising and growing your own healthy food, you and your family could probably survive this thing and never even know it happened.
Exactly.
So that is the point. I agree with you about news fasts.
Yeah. Yeah. And if we keep our immune system strong and healthy, I very rarely get sick. There was a point where I didn't get sick for 10 years and then I got a cold, So, and I've been working on this stuff for a long time, as a nutritionist and learning everything that I've learned. You had somebody on a couple of weeks ago, maybe last week, that was talking about all the different things to do. Washing your hands all the time, wearing gloves, wearing a mask, don't talk to people, social distancing. It didn't really sit right in my spirit, because I just, it's our immune system. Remember, this is God. This is a God-given weapon, and it's so important right now. And I wish that the mainstream would start talking about it so that we can save lives. But start today to get that immune system up, and working. You really will be very, very happy with the results. You'll feel so much better. Your skin gets nice. Detox. That's really the way to go. Detox, good food, sunshine, deep breathing. Oh my gosh, very, very important to do deep breathing, but it's also important to do sleeping baby breathing. Deep breathing gets things going in the lungs and it clears wastes out, maybe in the form of gases, but it's very, very good for us. But also, did you ever watch a baby sleep and your breath is almost shallow? That's when the body's at rest, and that's when some of these things, these physiological processes are going to kick in and help you, and they're going to build up your body. So deep breathing and also sleeping baby breathing. I'm just going to put this out there, and I know that people are maybe going to cringe a little bit, but coffee enemas are absolutely indispensable if you want to do a really serious detox, and we can talk about that some more later on. But the coffee in the enema actually opens up the bile ducts and toxins pour out. If you want to fast track your detox, that's the way to go.
I want to just say something. You mentioned a recent guest. I think who you're referring to is Stefan Verstappen. And I did make a comment in that interview that if you're constantly wiping down doorknobs with bleach, et cetera, and getting really obsessive about that stuff, that obsessive compulsive piece of this puzzle is probably not healthy, even though what he was describing are probably wise habits. It just becomes a little bit unrealistic. And I think having a tip-top immune system and doing some of these things that we've talked about is probably a much wiser approach, a whole body approach to trying to put up the best defense against this coronavirus. Social distancing, I tell you what, if it becomes an absolute pandemic in this country like we're seeing in Wuhan, absolutely. Stay out of the malls, stay out of the stadiums, stay out of the movie theaters. But until we're seeing it spread like that, I just don't agree with the social distancing. You just have to be prepared mentally, and of course you have to have your immune system as best prepared as possible.
Yeah, what happens if you're doing all that stuff and a little bug sneaks in? What if you didn't cover one of your bases and something sneaks in?
Well, and this thing is airborne. That's the problem. And it's got an R naught factor of 4, which means it's incredibly virulent, and people are spreading it like mad. So again, we're going to have to just keep our eye on the best possible numbers and analytics about this thing that we can. We know we're being lied to about the number of cases in China and the number of deaths. And that's the scary part. They're trying to scare the hell out of us. But I still don't think we're being given the real numbers about how many people have it. I don't know that they can even track it, since the thing has like a 28-day incubation period. It's just,
Yes.
it's frightening. It speaks to the nature of the bioweapon. And it's interesting that you mentioned that Steven Soderbergh movie Contagion, because what they told us, I think that was 2010, or was it 2012 that movie came out?
2011.
What they show in that damn movie is pretty much what's happening right now.
Exactly. Exactly. And the event 201 and Bill Gates saying 70% of the planet could be, I mean, it's the script.
Yeah. Well, they
It's
love to
the
tell us
script.
what they're going to do before they do it.
Yeah. So,
Back to you. We've got about 20 minutes left.
that's, yeah. So the, one more thing about this is grounding. I don't know if you know about grounding, but
Yeah, I've
it's
talked
very,
about
very,
grounding with my friend Sophia Smallstorm. She's a big believer in grounding.
it's very, very important because our body fills up with voltage from all the electronics, and some people live on high floors, 20 stories up or whatever it is, even 4 stories up, and the higher up you are and you've got all these electronics going on, you tend to accumulate this voltage, which is, we learned, going to affect you on a cellular level, right? So you want to ground yourself so that the voltage can drain into the earth. So that means walking barefoot, getting some sunshine, going out into nature, going out into a place where there's moving water.
Tilling the soil. Working a
Yes,
vegetable garden.
yes,
Yeah,
yes,
getting one with nature and the earth. Yeah, Sophia and I have talked
yes.
about that. She's a big believer in being barefoot on
Yep.
hardwood floors. Get the carpet out of the way. Walk out on the grass. Be one with nature. It's amazing. I mean, God gave us everything we need to be healthy. That's the funny part.
Yes.
He gave us this
That's
perfect world, and the enemies of humanity have done a very, very good job defiling it. They've defiled our food. They've defiled our air. They put fluoride in the water. And then they shoot vaccines into our children. And then they roll out 5G. And I guess they just want us to don't worry, be happy. And we're not happy because we know we're under absolute all-out assault.
live a detoxing lifestyle. Always be mindful of detoxing. So get the information that you need to do that, and boost your immune system. Get the information that you need to do that. Those are the things, and like you said, these are God-given. This is what it's for. And if you publish this video, it'll be the first time I heard anybody talk about it for this virus. And that's really a shame. I really think that's a shame. But we know that we're living on a planet that has evil, and right now they're all going crazy with the evil. So let's just get ourselves in shape. And we don't have to worry about retroviruses or heavy metals or anything else they want to throw at us. Have at you, because we're going to be strong. That's all I have to say about that.
Well, we've got one more slide here, don't we? Is that 28 of 29? Is there one more, or is that it?
That's just, I have one more slide with the websites on it, because I know that you like to give the websites. So these are the 2 websites that they can find information on. I did put together a nice little supplement package for people that see the interview. If they want, they can go over there and buy that from me. And there's information about the Clean Energy Academy that we're going to talk about, hopefully, if you want.
Yeah, absolutely. So now we do have 15 minutes left. Perfect timing to talk about free energy, your experience with free energy. I don't know a lot about your background in that arena, but I know that the powers that be, Rockefeller and his associates, have been buying that stuff up and putting it in closets so nobody can find it and nobody can use it and nobody will ever see or know about it. They've been buying up the patents or stealing the patents or killing the inventors. This has been going on for decades. And now we have UN Agenda 2030, where they tell us that we need to get rid of our fossil fuels, and they don't come from dead dinosaurs, but we need to get rid of all our current forms of energy to save the planet, which will turn us into serfs unless they release new forms of clean energy, which I don't think they intend to do, Valerie.
I don't think they do either, unfortunately, Sean. I really have to agree with you on there. And as much as I am pro-Trump, because the alternative was too horrific to even think about, I don't see that he is talking much about alternative energy. I think that he's really into the fossil fuels. I mean, I know he's against the wind turbines and things like that. But there is such a thing as free energy. I've seen it. And so I'll see if I can nutshell my story for you.
Yeah, I want you to give us the best cliff notes on this story possible. One thing I want to say about President Trump is we're very blessed that the Wicked Witch isn't in the White House, because she would be fast-tracking UN Agenda 21. UN Agenda 2030, she would be fast-tracking the destruction and the dismantling of coal-powered plants, of coal-producing power plants, of our ability to heat our homes with natural gas, of being able to afford gasoline for our cars. And of course, this country would not be energy self-sufficient, which it now currently is, thanks to this president. So the good news is the witch isn't in there, because she'd be fast-tracking all the Soros globalist UN Agenda 2030 policies. So that's the good news. The bad news is, until we get some of these new forms of clean energy, some of these hidden forms of...
Yeah. So the free energy thing, we have been to, let me back up a little bit. So my husband is James Robitaille, and he's the inventor and the designer of something called the quantum energy generator, or the QEG. Now, when we started this, it was back in 2013, and we actually were living in Pennsylvania, and we were asked to move because the fracking that was going on there contaminated our water source. So we had to leave where we were, and my husband was looking into different things that we could do to get off of the grid. We just didn't want to be part of that whole stuff anymore. And he's an electronics engineer, worked for ShopVac Corporation for decades, actually. So when we moved, he set up he took a class with somebody, and we saw this technology, and he said, I can do that. So he started working on it, and the more research we did, we saw that this is something that people would be interested in. So he said that he would be able to do it, and this was something that was good for humanity. I don't know if you've heard the saying, be ashamed to die until you have won some victory for humanity. And that's what we went on. And we went full bore on that. We took out his retirement money, and we crowdfunded this thing, and we said, we're going to do this. This is going to be great. People are going to love this thing that we got going on. And he took a class, and unfortunately, the people that he took this class with didn't really want this information to get out without giving thousands and thousands of dollars to his lab and his company. I'm not going to name names. I'm not going to mention that, but people, can put two and two together. And so we crowdfunded this and got really big overnight. It was absolutely amazing. People were throwing money at us, and we made all kinds of plans and everything. But what I want to tell you about this really is that it was a nightmare. Okay. It wasn't that, do something nice for humanity, kind of feel good, warm, fuzzy thing. It turned into a horror, a horror show for us because of the trolling. And I'm sure you are very familiar with that. A lot of people are very familiar with that. And this was so bad. We were literally the heaviest trolled technology at that time on the website. And we have spent the past 6 years fighting the trolls. And they would tell us things like, we should commit suicide ourselves. We should die. They're going to come and kill us. My daughter Hope had such an attack from Satanist groups, which I believe you're also familiar with the whole Hoaxdead thing. They were pumping out 20, 30 videos about her and the project a day. And they shut down our crowdfunding campaign. So we literally had to spend everything we ever had. We lost homes, we lost cars. And, my husband, it's still in development, but we've had to go private. We can't put this out in the public anymore. There is hundreds of videos out there that you can look at that we just kept up there. But basically everything happens behind the scenes now. And we have, I think, close to 100 people in our academy. We run an academy. It's private. You have to join it, and you pay monthly fees, $25, really not a big deal. And you get all kinds of schematics, and we have 2 live calls a month where we have engineers talking about free energy projects and do-it-yourself projects. So this is what this has turned into for us. And actually, my husband is in the process now of coming over to Morocco. He had to stay back a little bit, had a few things to take care of, but you know, we're trying to get the lab shipped over here and get him over here. He needs some good sunshine also. We've been working very, very hard for 6 years, and it's really taken its toll on us. So that's what we do. And, you know, do you have any questions about it? I mean, I could tell you all the nightmares, all the stories.
Well, I do want to say one thing, and I didn't know who your husband was prior to this interview, and I didn't know that specific nature of this free energy stuff. You just said in your email to me that you've got experience with free energy, and the point I want to make about trolls is because many of us have seen this in the space. I made a video back in, I think it was 2000, maybe 11. It was titled, "Which Criminal Bank Hates SGT Report?" And you guys can go watch that because I was under vicious assault on a daily basis from trolls as well. And then once we discovered that the 3 main IP addresses from which all of these attacks were coming on my websites specifically, because I could see the IP addresses, we realized that those IP addresses were owned by one bank. A bank, folks. Within 48 hours, all those attacks stopped. So the point is that we know about Nikola Tesla. We know about the powers that be. We know about them putting us on meters so they can make us pay to get the electricity that we need, which is vital for us to live. And as soon as somebody wants to even try to oppose that system and try to create a device that might free humanity, think of the budget that would be tossed at trying to destroy those people. Because nobody can sit in their house all day long and make negative videos about one person or a couple of people all day long, every single day, with a small channel that doesn't get any YouTube revenue. Explain to me how that works. These people are paid to do it, and it's vicious, and it's horrific, and it's deep state tactics. It's big Rockefeller tactics to destroy anybody that would stand against them.
Yes, and we got all of that, and we did some very intense research, and we found out, you know, the Edward Snowden documents and J-Trig and all of that horror. We got all of it, and I'll just tell you a quick story. We were found by a woman. Her name is Wilhelmina, and she just loved what we were doing. You know, back in the day, back in 2014, we open sourced the plans to build this thing. Even though it was still in development, it was in development at that time too. We knew how to build it, and we just had to start working with it. And we were co-developing with people around the world, right? So she found us online, and she couldn't believe that she was able to download these plans for free. And she had just come into some money. She had come into like $120,000 and wanted to give it to us. She said, "What could you do with $120,000? You know, you could probably set up your lab and everything." So it was great, right? The bank wouldn't let her give us the money. And not only that, we were trolled saying how we're stealing money from a little old lady, you know? So it's just, like you say, it's all very, very diabolical, but we don't give up. We're not quitters. We have strong immune systems, and we keep going and going and going. And Sean, we were born into a war. It's a war between good and evil, Satan and Jesus, you know, and we know that we win. So it just gives me that impetus to keep going and keep going and keep going. And that's what we do, day at a time.
Yeah. Well, I love your Steely Reserve, and I appreciate you reaching out to me. You certainly have a lovely daughter and her husband. I think they're doing some important things, and I just appreciate you coming on today. Do you want to round it out with just reminding people how they can find you?
Yes, we have YouTube channels we have Fringe Energy. Here we go. Am I still sharing my screen? No. But the health site, www.holistichealthonline.info. And the energy site is fringeenergy.com. We also have Clean Energy Academy, which is if you have engineers that are interested in free energy, they can join the academy. We have other websites and other YouTube channels. Just look around. I mean, you certainly can find it. But I just wanted to say that the health package and Organite and Clean Energy Academy information are all on these two sites, holistichealthonline.info and fringeenergy.com.
All right. Very good. Well, I really appreciate your time, Valerie. Thank you so much today for coming on.
Thank you, Sean. It's really been a pleasure and quite an honor. And thank you so much for the work that you do. I love when your interviews pop up on my phone. I'm on it.
Thanks for that, Valerie. And let me just add, I finally got moving on figuring out how to turn these interviews into, of course, MP3s. I know how to do that, but how do you get it out there for the podcast world and onto podcast platforms? I'm finally figuring out how to do that. The name of the podcast is The Propaganda Antidote. So before very long, you'll be able to find it out on iTunes. I don't think it's there yet, but we're working on that as we speak. So just wanted to let people know that.
All right. Well, that's a really good move, especially with all this silly censorship going on.
Yeah, they're not making it any easier to find us. I'll tell you that. All right. Well, guys, thank you so much for tuning in. We very much appreciate it. And Valerie, take care. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you, Sean. See ya.
All right. Bye-bye. And guys, thanks so much, guys. And for Real News 24/7, you can visit us directly at SGT Report, the antidote to corporate propaganda and Mockingbird mainstream media lies 24/7. We love you guys. God bless.
Love ya. Bye.
Bye-bye.
I see now a message that was truly coming from God to the people. And that's why I'm on this show sharing it. And that's why I think this documentary has some value for people, because it makes some important points as to how to understand this phenomenon and how to be prepared for the Lord's return.